Hi guys, this is Amy. I'm the Red Dirt Vegan from Blogspot, and I'm going to be showing you guys how to make 100% whole grain artisan bread. No kneading, super healthy, and super easy. And we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to show you guys what I'm doing here. I've already got a little bit of flour in there, but this is whole white wheat flour. You can use regular whole wheat flour. You just want to make sure that see how it's pretty finely ground? That's what you want it to be. You could also use sprouted grains, and I'll make another video about that. I'm not going to talk about that much here because it's a little more in-depth. But you could use sprouted wheat or sprouted rye or something like that. So what I'm doing here, if you can see, is I'm weighing the flour. This is a digital scale from Bed Bath & Beyond. And the reason I'm weighing it is because it's just a more accurate way of figuring out how much flour you have. And you get more consistent results this way. Now you can just use a cup measure like this, and that's fine. But you may have to tweak the flour later, whereas if you weigh it ahead of time, you shouldn't have to add more flour or add more water later. It should just all even out. Now, flours do vary in how moist they are, and so as your flour gets older, because this is a 50-pound bag I have here, when I get to the bottom of this bag, I'll typically need more water because it will have dried out a little bit. And when you're using sprouted grains, or if you're going to grind your own flour from fresh wheat berries, that's going to be more moist than this is going to be. And so you'll need to reduce your water in that instance too. So we weighed our flour right here into our mixing bowl, and we're just going to sit that here on the counter. Now this is gluten flour, and gluten is the wheat that's found in the protein that's found in wheat, and it helps it stick together, and it just makes it makes the bread stick together. When I was first trying to make good whole grain bread, my bread always fell apart and it didn't look like the stuff you could buy at the store. It was really bad. And I couldn't figure out what the problem was, and it was gluten. And I added the gluten flour to it, and some recipes will tell you to add like a cup for every 4 cups of flour, and you don't need that much. This is 2 tablespoons, and I'm using like 3 3/4 or 3.5 cups of flour. You don't need much, you just need a little bit, but it really helps. Now you might be able to get rid of it, but it might be a little crumblier than what you'd like it to be. So it really just helps the texture. Now if you didn't want to add that extra gluten, you could possibly use soy flour. Or you could substitute part of your water with potato water. If you boil some potatoes, you can use the water off of that to soften your bread. It helps make your bread softer. I know people that use gluten flour and potato water. You can do whatever you want. This is freshly ground flaxseed meal. And I just put flax seeds through a coffee grinder. I mean, you can get one at Walmart for like 10 bucks. It's no big deal. You get a lot more omega-3 when you grind the seeds yourself, because when they sit on the shelf at the health food store for who knows how long, it's losing omega-3 like every second. So it's best to grind them fresh, and you can grind a whole bunch at one time, put it in the freezer or the refrigerator, and that'll help keep it from losing omega-3. This is some sunflower seeds. I just like some crunch in my bread. You can use them, you can not use them. I'm also going to put some millet seeds in there because I like crunch. You could use pumpkin seeds, you could use sesame seeds, you could use no seeds. You know, it doesn't really matter one way or the other to me, but if I'm making it, I want some crunch in it. This is kosher real salt. And the reason I'm using kosher salt is because it's a larger grain and you typically end up using less salt overall because it's a larger grain, but it still has a good flavor to it. And then the reason I'm using this real salt brand is because it's equivalent to like Himalayan sea salt, but it's actually from Salt Lake in Utah, and so we don't have to pay the import costs. So it's a lot cheaper, but it's basically the same thing. And if you'll notice, it's kind of like pink and brown, and it has all kinds of colors in it. If you buy sea salt at the store and you open it up and it's like pure white, that's processed heated sodium chloride. You might as well have just bought regular salt. Real salt, like it says here, looks like this. And this has a lot of different trace minerals in it. It's not going to raise blood pressure in the same way that that just plain sodium chloride will. And so that's the one that I recommend. Now, I'm having a hard time opening my yeast jar. There we go. This is a brand new yeast jar. And I'm just using Fleischmann's active dry yeast just because it's easier, it's cheaper to buy it in a jar this way. And I'm all about saving money. So I've also buy in a 3-pound bag, but somebody gave this to me and I don't turn down free food, so I took it. But I usually buy in bulk a 3-pound really tightly packed block of yeast. So we've got all of these things in here together. We got our salt, our yeast, our flour, the gluten, and our seed. Now we're just going to whisk it. See, most of my time has been spent explaining this to you. I could have already had it done and turned the camera off if I had just done it. So we whisked it really well. Now we're going to add the water. And this is just, I got it from my reverse osmosis, but you could use tap water or whatever you feel like using. I don't typically add all of it at once just because if you get too much water, it's kind of a pain. So I just start out with less. And then this was some extra virgin olive oil and some local raw honey. And I was originally making it without those two things because I like cooking with less oil, but the texture just wasn't very good. And so I added it and it softened it up quite a bit, because before it was really stout. You could like hit somebody over the head with it. It was really, I mean, the flavor was really good, but the texture wasn't as good. So the honey and the oil just kind of soften it up a little bit, and of course the honey gives it a sweet flavor that a lot of people like in their wheat bread. So I call this recipe 3-seed honey wheat bread because that's exactly what it is. And you want it to be a little wetter than traditional, you know, knead for 20 minutes bread dough. Because you're going to steam cook it, and you want it to be wetter. You're not going to knead it at all. Like, this is the most involved that you're going to get in this bread, period. See, I'm done. I'm done with this. It's done. I'm going to put a towel on it. I'm just going to put a dish towel on it just to cover it. Keep the flies that are in my kitchen all the time off of it. And we're going to set it aside. And I'm going to show you guys what I do when it's done. This is what it looks like after it's sat for about 2 to 3 hours. You want it to, this is double the batch that we just made, by the way, so it's not going to go from that little bit to this huge amount. I just want to make that clear from the get-go, but this is kind of what it's supposed to look like. It's supposed to be stretchy, it's supposed to be wet. This is just perfect. And this particular pan, this is made by USA Pan, and it's a non-stick loaf pan. I also have cookie sheets by them, and it's a silicone-lined non-stick loaf pan, and so it doesn't have Teflon in it, which has some health concerns, and there's no environmentally detrimental chemicals in it, or health detrimental chemicals in it. It's a really great alternative to traditional nonstick, and it's a workhorse. I'm telling you, with this particular type of dough, even if you spray it, you cannot use a traditional loaf pan. It has to be a nonstick. Now this particular nonstick one, I don't have to spray it. Now if you're going to use a Teflon nonstick, you still have to spray those, or it will stick, because this is a wetter dough. It's a very sticky dough. If you guys can see what I'm doing here, I'm just kind of folding it under and stretching it out, and we're just going to make a loaf, and we're going to stick it in our loaf pan here like this. We eat about a loaf of bread a day on average, and so I make 2 loaves at a time. That way I only have to make bread once every 2 days. And see, it's, you know, it looks about like this. That's perfect. We're going to throw it in our pan here. And that's all the touching you ever do to this bread until it's done. Oh, and this is typically the type of bowl that I use. It's just a stainless steel bowl with just a plastic lid. You don't want an airtight lid. You don't even necessarily have to wash this if you don't want to. I probably will. We're going to do what's called resting the dough. We're just going to cover it with some saran wrap. Not real tightly, just loose. Just loosely cover it with some saran wrap. Because you want to leave it a little room to get that top that is really good on bread. These will, they won't quite double probably, but they'll fill up the pan at least for sure. So we're going to set our timer for 40 minutes because it's fresh dough. If it had been refrigerated, we'd want to leave it for about 90 minutes. Just because it'll be cold and it will have to get to room temperature while it's growing, and it'll just be a little bit slower process. And so since this is fresh dough, we're going to leave it sitting here for about 40 minutes, and then we're going to come back and I'm going to show you what you do when you put it in the oven. Because we're cooking it with steam, it's a little bit different. We're cooking it at a higher temperature, and so it's a little bit different, but once you get the hang of it, it's no big deal. Because already, you have to be honest, this is a lot easier than kneading something for half of your day. A lot easier. And while that's a great bicep workout, you'd rather be doing something a little more fun than kneading bread, I'm sure. So we'll let this sit for a while, and we'll come back and we'll take it from there.